Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, wait, why did I agree to that? Maybe someone convinced you to lend them money, or maybe you found yourself saying yes at work, even though you wanted to say no. That's the invisible power of manipulation. And today we're diving into a fascinating book called Manipulation Techniques by David Cliff Moore. This book isn't just about how people manipulate us. It's about why manipulation works, the tools behind it, and most importantly, how to protect yourself while also learning how to influence others ethically. Let's start with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Now that phrase might sound a little intimidating, but it's actually simple once you break it down. Neuro means your brain and nervous system, the way your mind and body communicate. Linguistic is the language you use, words, tone, and even the way you describe things to yourself. Programming is about patterns, habits, and automatic behaviors that shape your daily life. Put together, NLP is about how thoughts, words, and actions combine to create your experience, and how those patterns can be influenced. David Cliff Moore explains that manipulators often use NLP tools to guide emotions and decisions without the other person fully realizing it. But at the same time, these same tools can also be used for self-improvement and positive influence. One of the most famous techniques is called anchoring. Anchoring means linking a specific emotion to a gesture, word, or even an environment. Think of it like planting an emotional shortcut in your brain. For example, imagine a coach who tells their team, "You've got this," every time they make a great play while giving them a thumbs up. Over time, the thumbs up gesture itself becomes an anchor. Even if the coach just gives the thumbs up silently, the athlete instantly feels that same surge of confidence. That's anchoring, and it works not only in sports but in everyday life too. Advertisers use it constantly. A soda company might always pair their drink commercials with laughter, sunshine, and upbeat music. The message is clear: this product garners happiness. Before long, you see the soda in the store and unconsciously feel better just by looking at it. But here's the twist. Anchors aren't always placed by others. We can deliberately set anchors for ourselves. For example, if you always play the same calming song before giving a presentation, eventually just hearing the opening notes of that song can trigger calmness. Or if you stand tall, take a deep breath, and smile every time you're nervous, that little ritual can become an anchor that tells your body, relax, you're safe, you've got this. Moore warns that manipulators know this. They might anchor their presence to feelings of safety, trust, or pleasure, so you unconsciously let your guard down around them. That's why it's important to notice not only what people say, but how they make you feel when they say it. So the takeaway is this: anchoring is powerful. Used negatively, it can trap you. Used wisely, it can free you. Now let's move to the second tool, body language and subliminal persuasion. Moore makes a strong point. Body language never lies. Think about this. Have you ever asked someone if they were okay and they replied, "I'm fine," but their crossed arms, tense shoulders, and downward gaze told you the exact opposite? That's because body language often reveals what words try to hide. One fascinating example Moore shares: foot direction. You can smile politely and nod in conversation, but if your feet are pointed toward the exit, your body's already halfway out the door. Subconsciously, you're signaling, "I want to leave." Most people don't notice feet, but once you do, it's like having a secret window into true intentions. Then there's the realm of subliminal persuasion. Subliminal simply means below the threshold of conscious awareness. These are the tiny signals that bypass your thinking brain but still affect your behavior. Retail stores are masters at this. Ever notice how clothing shops often play fast, upbeat music? That isn't random. The tempo of the music subtly makes you walk faster, browse quicker, and make impulsive choices. On the other hand, high-end stores play slow, calming music, encouraging you to linger, take your time, and spend more. Another example, subtle scents. A bakery pumps the smell of fresh bread into the street, not only because bread is baking, but because the smell itself triggers cravings and pulls customers inside. Advertisers and politicians use similar subliminal tricks with colors, background images, and even pauses in speech to steer emotions. The lesson here is twofold. Pay attention to the unspoken. If someone's words and body language don't match, trust the body language. Be aware of the invisible nudges. When you suddenly feel rushed to buy something, or oddly compelled to agree, ask yourself, is this my decision or am I being guided? Words are just the surface. The real story often lies in gestures, tones, rhythms, and unspoken signals. Up until now, we've looked at persuasion and influence in a somewhat neutral light, tools that can be used for good or bad. But in this section, Moore goes deeper into the shadows, where influence turns into outright manipulation. This is what he calls dark psychology. Dark psychology isn't about simple persuasion. It's about deliberately exploiting human emotions, vulnerabilities, and blind spots for selfish gain. And the people who use it, they're often skilled at hiding their true intentions behind charm, kindness, or authority. Let's look at a few traits more highlights. Gaslighting. This is when someone makes you doubt your memory or perception of reality. Imagine recalling a conversation and the other person insists, "That never happened. You must be imagining things." Over time, this erodes your confidence until you start questioning your own mind. Narcissistic charm. At first, it feels wonderful. They shower you with compliments, make you feel seen, special, and admired. But it's not genuine. It's bait. The praise creates dependency, so when they ask for favors later, you feel obligated to give in. Emotional blackmail. This is guilt as a weapon. "If you really cared about me, you'd do this." Or, "After everything I've done for you, you're going to say no." It traps you in a cycle where the only way to ease the guilt is to comply. Moore illustrates this with a classic example. A coworker constantly praises you. "You're so reliable. I don't know what I'd do without you." They make you feel like the most important person in the office. But then slowly they start handing you tasks that aren't yours. "Can you just help me out this once?" Before long, just this once becomes every week, and suddenly you're doing their work while they reap the benefits. That's not friendship. That's manipulation disguised as kindness. And here's the most important part. Awareness is your shield. These techniques thrive in the dark, where you don't recognize them. But once you put a name to the pattern, gaslighting, emotional blackmail, love bombing, guilt tripping, you take away its power. The manipulator may still try, but you see through it, and their control starts to crumble. In other words, you can't always stop people from trying to manipulate you, but you can stop yourself from being manipulated once you know the game. After exploring the darker side of psychology, Moore shifts gears and reveals something surprising. The world around us is full of persuasion tactics. Many of them aren't even malicious. They're just strategies used in marketing, sales, leadership, and everyday interactions. In fact, Moore lists over 100 persuasion techniques. Don't worry, we're not going through all of them here, but let's highlight a few of the most common ones you'll probably recognize instantly. Scarcity. "Only 3 seats left. Sale ends tonight." Scarcity works because humans are wired to fear missing out. When something feels rare, it feels more valuable, even if it's not. Inclusion framing. "We're all in this together." This appeals to our need to belong. Nobody wants to feel like the outsider, so people are more likely to agree if it's framed as a group effort. Authority. Experts recommend this. Doctors say 9 out of 10 prefer it. Authority creates trust, even when it's just a person in a lab coat for a commercial. Social proof. Over 1 million people have already signed up. When we see others doing something, our brain assumes it must be the right thing to do. Now, these techniques are everywhere, from TV ads to political campaigns, from your online shopping cart to the way your boss presents a new project. They work because they bypass rational thought and go straight for emotional buttons. And here's the danger. The more emotional you feel, the less logical you become. Urgency, guilt, excitement, all of these emotions can cloud judgment. That's why Moore suggests a simple but powerful defense strategy. Whenever you feel a sudden rush of urgency, pressure, or guilt, pause. Ask yourself, am I making this choice freely, or am I being nudged? That single pause breaks the spell. It gives your rational mind a chance to step back and evaluate. You might still choose to buy the product or agree to the request, but this time, it's your decision, not a manipulated reaction. The truth is, persuasion itself isn't evil. We all use it. Parents persuade kids to eat vegetables. Teachers persuade students to focus. Leaders persuade teams to follow a vision. It becomes dangerous only when it's hidden, deceptive, or controlling. So the golden rule is this: persuasion should empower, not enslave. If someone tries to rush, guilt, or confuse you, step back. Because in the end, the strongest defense against manipulation is awareness and the willingness to slow down before saying yes. After taking us through the darker side of manipulation, David Cliff Moore closes with a powerful reminder. Persuasion itself is not good or bad. It's neutral. Think of it like fire. Fire can burn down a house, or it can keep you warm on a freezing night. The difference depends on how it's used. The same goes for influence. When it's used selfishly, it becomes manipulation. But when it's used wisely with care and responsibility, it becomes leadership. Moore draws a simple but striking contrast. A manipulator uses flattery to exploit. Imagine someone saying, "You're the best I've ever worked with," No one else comes close. But secretly, they're only buttering you up so you'll do a favor. That's praise with a hidden hook. A leader, on the other hand, uses encouragement to uplift. Hey, I've seen the way you handle challenges. I know this project is tough, but I believe you've got the skills to figure it out. Notice the difference? The words aren't empty, they're grounded in truth, and they build confidence instead of dependency. That's the line between manipulation and integrity. Manipulation makes you smaller, weaker, more dependent. Influence with integrity makes you stronger, braver, and more capable. Moore suggests 3 simple habits for building this kind of influence. Make others feel understood. Real listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak. When people feel heard, trust grows naturally. Frame benefits for everyone. Instead of do this because I want it, try here's how this will help us both. Ethical persuasion always creates mutual benefit, not one-sided gain. Inspire with optimism, not fear. Fear can push people to act quickly, but it leaves resentment behind. Optimism, on the other hand, plants seeds of long-term motivation. Think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s words. He didn't say, "I have a nightmare." He said, "I have a dream." That vision pulled people forward with hope, not dread. Here's a quick story Moore shares to drive this home. He describes a manager who had 2 very different approaches with his team. When deadlines were tight, sometimes he'd say, "If you don't finish this, the whole department will look bad and it'll fall on you." That created results, but only out of fear. Team morale dropped and resentment brewed. But later, the same manager tried a new approach. He said, "I know this deadline is tough, but I believe in this team. If we pull together and hit it, we'll not only impress the higher-ups, we'll prove to ourselves just how strong we really are." Guess which approach created loyalty, energy, and pride? The second one, influence with integrity. And that's Moore's final message. You have a choice. Every time you influence someone, your child, your partner, your colleague, you can choose to manipulate for your own benefit, or you can choose to inspire, to uplift, and to lead. Because at the end of the day, manipulation wins compliance, but ethical influence wins trust. And trust, that's worth more than any short-term advantage. Moore leaves us with actionable tools. Create anchors. Train yourself with positive triggers. Watch the feet. Notice body language cues. Know your weak spots. Flattery, scarcity, or fear. Awareness protects you. Influence responsibly. Lift others instead of controlling them. Closing reflection. So what's the real lesson here? Manipulation isn't magic, it's psychology. Once you understand the tools, you can't be tricked as easily. Even better, you can choose to use these tools to build trust, inspire people, and connect more deeply. Because real influence isn't about control, it's about freedom. Which of these manipulation techniques surprised you the most? Anchoring, body language, or dark psychology? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences. Manipulation isn't magic, it's psychology. Once you understand the tools, you can't be tricked as easily. Even better, you can choose to use these tools to build trust, inspire people, and connect more deeply. Because real influence isn't about control, it's about freedom. Which of these manipulation techniques surprised you the most? Anchoring, body language, or dark psychology? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences.